Boy, Elijah, welcome back to another edition of Humble Dad. On the set of Glenn's is how I see it. Have another special guest that's in the building. Really excited because we had to postpone this since I went on vacation, and he was willing to even postpone it and come back and meet with us. So a little bit about him. He's a Christian first and foremost, married, father of three, two daughters, ages 29 and 24, has one son that's 2.5 years old, man, and even a grandfather at this stage in his life. Retired veteran from USAF and a former gang member. So we'll get off into that. Martial arts minister, graphic artist, and musician, and probably need to be writing a book on all of this stuff that I just talked about. None other than Mr. Victor. What's going on, sir?
How you
Can you hear
doing?
me? I'm good. How are you?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I'm not hearing you as well as earlier, but I'm hearing you.
Oh, okay, so maybe I have to speak up a little louder, maybe. So I'm gonna go with the first question. What do you feel like the difference between a dad and a father is?
That's a difficult question because everyone interprets those two terms differently.
Just when we was about to get ready and go, right? There's always seems to be a situation where this transpires, and so, but that's okay. Had a little bit of technical difficulty, and we'll bring him right back. All right. So go ahead. You say it was it's difficult to say because everybody has their own interpretation. I want to know yours. What's your interpretation?
For me, father is more or less you can be a biological father that you just provided the seed and boom, you have a child. Dad to me is more intimate. You you're someone who is more interacting, more connected, and it's almost like a, for lack of a better term, and not disrespect, but almost like a pet name that
Mm,
children give to their father. That's how I see dad.
for sure. Okay. Yeah, I've heard that it put like that, and then I understand what you mean by the pet name. Somebody called it a nickname.
Right.
To show the intimacy of a
Yes, sir.
man and their child. So kind of take me back to when you was a youngin. Tell me about your father, your dad, or any men that will fit that role. Kind of take me back between like elementary and middle school time.
Okay. For me, my dad was in the military, and so I remember that he was very disciplined. He didn't take any stuff, you know.
Yeah,
So we learned discipline quick. And I'm from old school, so we got whoopings. We didn't just get a timeout.
yeah.
So I learned discipline. He was always working, always busy. He had even transitioned from what they call enlisted to the officer corps. He had gotten out the military briefly to go back to college so he could become an officer, and so that just showed me his work ethic. We didn't get to sit around and be lazy. We had chores that we had to do. So even as young children, he had us helping. There was a point where he was taking art in school, and he would allow me to help him with some of his art projects. He was always trying to teach me something, always, from boxing to running pass patterns in football in the yard. It was all something he wanted me to learn.
Mm,
And a lot of it was based on, I have to say, from my perspective, not necessarily his, but from my perspective, just preparing me for life. Because there were often times that he would say, "Don't you know they're going to expect you to be able to do this? Don't you know they're going to expect you to be able to do that?" There was a point when I wasn't really into basketball. I used to like watching it, but I didn't want to play it because I was short. And
mm,
he'd take me out to the court anyway and make me learn how to play. Don't you know they're going to expect you to know how to play? Excuse me.
mm.
So it was things like that that just really showed me that he was trying to always be involved, and he was heavy into vacations and taking photographs. He always had a camera, so we learned that family was important to him,
That's good stuff. So what do you
and school was
remember?
important. School was important as well.
I would imagine being in the military. So when you were young and in the elementary, what some of the stories or situations or vacations that you remember the most?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? It was breaking
Yeah,
up on my end.
when you were younger, what do you remember most about like what your dad may have said to you, or even the trip? We'll go like, what was the trip that you remember most when you was in elementary or in middle school?
Well, in elementary, I had a strange transition because um, my family was raising us Baptist, but they had me attend Catholic school
Oh
because
wow.
the academics were better.
Okay.
So right away, I knew that school was important to them. Um, so we had nuns that would paddle you, you know, if you.
Really? Okay.
Um, yes, yes, they had permission to discipline us, and so. But I remember one distinct occasion when bringing home a rosary. We were supposed to do so many Hail Marys, Our Fathers, and my mother, not so much my father. My mother was like, "We don't do that at home," So she took it, snatched it, threw it in the glove compartment, and gave it back to me when I went to school. So I didn't get to take it in the house, And so as a kid, when you have one standard at home and you have another standard at school or somewhere else, you kind of get caught in the middle, and so there brings some confusion, but there's no confusion about what the standard is at home.
Yeah,
it's,
for
it's
sure.
always that.
Yeah,
It's just okay. Why can't I do it? My friends are doing it, or my classmates are doing it.
yeah.
But other than that, I really the biggest thing that I recall is that once again he was very involved. He wanted us to participate. We used to have parties at the house, barbecues, cookouts, birthday parties. Um, they used to entertain their friends, and we had the ping pong table, we had the pool table, we had the boxing or the bag, the hanging bag in the garage. So he
Mm,
was well rounded and wanted us to be well rounded as well. And once
mm,
again, I said, he taught us how to ride bikes. He taught us how to, play football. So he was very involved in our lives, and that's the biggest takeaway that I got from him. Even when we traveled in the military, it was good for me because it got me out my cultural box. Because I originally was raised down south, Arkansas, and while he was going to school, and that transition from enlisted to becoming an officer, and then once he was done with school, we traveled again. So I got to live
mm.
in, outside of Arkansas. I got to go to the northern states. We even got to go to Germany, and so I got to see other cultures, and that helped broaden my horizons,
Okay.
rather than being that stuck, southern attitude. I got to see what cultures were like what people were like in other areas,
So when you
and
so then
that helped mature me and grow me.
okay, so then when you get to be in the high school, like kind of take me through the transition of getting into a gang with a dad that was
Okay.
militant. Does that make sense of a question?
Right. So yes, sir. Yes, sir. So getting into a gang was more of a survival thing than it wasn't so much my parents knew about it. It was one of those things. I dressed a certain way when I left the house, had my change of clothes in my backpack, and when I got to school, went in the restroom, changed my clothes so I fit into the gang code, and the dress code of the gang, and then I changed back before I went home. And I actually attended Columbine High School, and this was my father had already gotten out the military at this point, and we had moved to that part of Colorado, and so it was pretty much predominantly all white Caucasian based school. So there were very few minorities in that school. So a lot of what led me to the gang was common enemy, for lack of a better term, to use a
Yeah,
military term. We had a common enemy. It was
yeah.
more of I was getting picked on, and this Hispanic guy was getting picked on, and we were both on the track team, and we were like, okay, look, I watch your back if you watch mine, and because they wasn't just picking on you, it wasn't just name calling, they would get physical. So
Mhm.
So I started getting into martial arts, just to protect myself, and just never dropped the martial arts after that. But
Wow.
and then at some point, I guess I don't know if it was through church and things like that, the youth group at church or Sunday school, but at some point I started feeling that what I was doing wasn't right, even though it was just in my mind. You know, I needed protection, he needed protection, and we're gonna fight. You know,
Mm.
at some point there was a switch, and so I wanted to only fight for those who couldn't protect themselves. You know, I knew I could protect myself. You know, I didn't go looking for fights. I didn't participate in, you know, shooting anybody, stabbing anybody, anything like that. You know, so by the grace of God, I don't have a police record, was never arrested, don't even have any tats, you know, so, or tattoos, you know, so it was God's hand definitely on me and protecting me. And I was able to transition from his gang, the Hispanic gang, to just being a leader of the misfits and the outcasts. If let's say you were the new kid at school and you were a minority, I'd give you a copy of my class schedule. If somebody messed with me, you know where to find me, and I come deal with them. And that's what it became. And then began to get a small following of people that found out I was a martial artist and they wanted to learn martial arts to help protect themselves. And so we would ditch classes. I don't recommend that to anyone, but we would ditch classes and go sneak into the gym and start training in some martial arts. Or we ditch classes and go outside across the street to the park and do some martial arts, just so we could learn to protect ourselves, you know, from the bullies that were always messing with us, you know. So it came down to, and it was usually jocks, you know, the muscle heads as we call them, that just want to pick on the smaller people and the minorities. You know, so that's how I got caught up in the gang, and like I said, it was by the grace of God that I was able to leave without, you know, having to pay the price or pay, you know, retribution, or in Japan they have the Yakuza, which is the Japanese mafia, and you have to give up a pinky to leave them. So we didn't have anything that intense, you know. So it was just a matter of we parted our ways. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So how did you come to even getting in? I know being bullied took you to the point of getting into martial arts, but where was martial arts at for you to even learn it? Was it at school, outside? Like, where was?
No, sir. It was. We had gone on a family vacation back to Arkansas, and one of my cousins was walking around in the projects wearing some weird outfit, and I asked him what it was. He said it was a kung fu uniform, and he told me about Bruce Lee. I'm like, who's that? And then when the vacation was over, I went back home, and he said, man, you need to learn this stuff to protect yourself up there from them boys, you know.
Wow.
And so I bought a martial arts book. It wasn't even Bruce Lee, but I bought a martial arts book and started studying it. And then eventually I got some Bruce Lee books and started studying that. And I would just learn on my own. I would even go to grocery stores and grab the magazines off the rack and just stand in the aisle for hours, just memorizing the techniques in the magazine, and then put it back on the shelf. And then I'd get with my friends who could afford martial arts lessons and compare notes. You know, what I was learning was turning out to be more effective than what they were learning, you know. And so we would that's how I learned, by hands-on. You know, let's try this. No, that didn't work. Let's try that. That didn't work. We would rent martial arts movies, and the first time would be for fun. The next time we rewind it, play it in slow-mo, back when you could do that. And we would study the movements. Oh, that's fake. That's not real. Okay, let's try this one. Okay, that's realistic. And we would just keep practicing until we had it down, till it became second nature. And I just continued to do that for many, many years, mostly self-taught.
So when you got ready to go and off to school or graduate from wherever you went, military, wherever it was, what was the conversation? Here we go again, but it'll be back, I'm sure. All right, I'm gonna ask him about the. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Sorry about that.
No worries. What was the conversation with your dad when you was about to leave home? What was that conversation like?
So, unfortunately, just as I graduated from high school, my parents got divorced, so he was no longer in the picture. Okay. So I went off to college my first year reluctantly. My mom kind of made me go, saying, you need to get out of here. You need to try to do something else with your life. Excuse me. And so I tried college for a couple of years. My first year, I was a music major at a small school in Wyoming. Dropped out.
What?
Second
What?
year,
Wait, hold on, pause. Well, okay. We were in Colorado and Arkansas, and then we went to a small school in Wyoming.
yes, sir. Yes,
What?
sir. And the only reason, well, I'll tell you what happened. So they had a jazz band. That school had a jazz band traveling, doing on recruiting tour, and they had come to Columbine High School. And the director of the jazz band spoke to our band director, and we got connected. And then they met with me and my mom at our house, and she said, "Yes, you need to go." So I got a partial scholarship, and I should have known that that was by the grace of God, because I didn't even have to audition, and that's unheard of. They just found out how many instruments I played, and like, okay, let's offer you a scholarship. So I got a partial scholarship because my grades weren't that good, but I still got to go. And it turned out to be a real small town. I was like, I can't do this. I need to be back in the city.
Okay.
So I dropped out, went back home, and tried the local college there. Excuse me. And then dropped out, and then eventually joined the military.
Oh, okay. So what age was that? Was when you joined the military?
I was 21 when I joined the military. I was 21.
Okay, so as you are in the military, where is your dad in the picture at all at this point in time? Y'all just lost touch?
We had visitation, but we didn't like going to visit him. So um, it was just very awkward. And the whole he said she said thing. She would badmouth him, he would badmouth her, and I was just not. That was not something I wanted to be a part of. And I was still bitter and angry about him leaving us. So from my standpoint, now kids don't always know what goes on behind the parents' doors. But from my standpoint, he had become violent. And I even had to stand up to him physically on a couple occasions. And so that was another reason why I was practicing my martial arts so intensely. And so when they finally departed, their ways, I didn't want to have anything to do with them, because I felt, you're supposed to be my dad. You're supposed to be here for us. And one of the things that he told us when we were going on a visitation, on the way, he said, "Well, you're a man now. I'm out." And that was his way of saying they're about to get a divorce. And I was, okay, they had separated, and now it's official, kind of thing. So once he did that, it took me years to, and I was supposed to be a Christian eventually. I had accepted Christ or rededicated my life to Christ, and I was still mad at him. And the Lord started dealing with me about that, started dealing with me about harboring unforgiveness. Scripture talks about if we don't forgive others, God won't forgive us. And Lord knows I've done some things I need forgiveness for, so, so I had to forgive him. And, so he was no longer really in the picture, but every once in a while I would reach out to him. I'd send him a letter. And it was funny because my mom would still keep in touch with him, and she would, say, "Hey, I think it's time for one of your letters." And, I'm going to be preaching in my letter, so, so he would get some, as my wife would say, some act right, he would get some act right because I sent him a letter, for a season. And then he'd go back to his ways, and then she'd tell me on the phone, "I think it's time for another one of your letters," And so that was the extent of our relationship after my parents divorced.
Okay, so when you get ready you go off to the military, then when is the first child that comes into the picture? Well, here we go. Hopefully it'll come back again, because this is a very good conversation. So you got me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. So when you go off to the military. Now you're experiencing and seeing a whole bunch of things, obviously. When do you meet the mother of your child?
So I've been divorced. So I was not living for the Lord. I was running the clubs, and that's where I met the future mother, my two daughters, my oldest daughters. And we have a son now with my current wife, my present wife, my only real wife. So my godly wife, let's put it that way, my godly wife. So I was living for the world the first time, and all in the flesh, and it had come to a point where, because I was spiritually naive and immature, I just thought, okay, she knows about God. I know about God. We're good. You know, I was Baptist. She was Catholic. We should be fine. But when the problems came, you know, when the enemy comes in, you have to be rooted and grounded. And I was not, you know, and so I was working on it, and I was growing, but she wasn't, you know, and so it even reached a point where she was like, I don't want anything to do with you or your God, you know, and then we ended up getting a divorce. So long, and that was after 13 years and 2 kids later, you know. So, so then I was a single parent for 4 years. With the
So you
Lord had
had
blessed
full
me with my
custody?
daughters, which is
So
almost
you had,
unheard of.
wow. So
Um,
okay.
and so, I'm sorry.
No, you said what I was about to ask. You said that you had full custody, so that's what I was
Yes,
surprised
sir.
by that because, as you said, that's a rarity. So,
Yes, sir. And that was a God thing too. We had gotten divorced. The court had originally awarded uh, our daughters to to her, and we were stationed in Las Vegas, or living in Las Vegas at the time, of all places,
mm,
you know.
wow.
And then the military was sending me to Korea, so the judge basically said, "Well, you're going to be out of country, so I'm giving the girls to her." You know, and so I was without my girls for a whole year, no interaction, because I was in a foreign country. So when I came back, I ended up being stationed in Washington State at a base there, and I ended up getting a phone call one day from Child Protective Services saying, "Hey, if you don't come get your girls, they're going into foster care." And I'm like, "What?" So I left Washington. I got permission. God gave me permission with my supervisor to leave. Um, I drove down to had my little hoopty that I bought. I drove down to Las Vegas from Washington, packed up what I could in my little station wagon vehicle, and drove them back to Washington. And I was supposed to have an appointment with the lady in Las Vegas courts, and she said, "Well, I'm busy here, so I tell you what, just call me when you've got them enrolled in school, and we'll close this case." And
Wow.
so I was like,
How
"What? I didn't
old
have
were
to
they?
go to court." I'm sorry.
How old were
How old
they?
were they?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I want to say the oldest was 11 or 12,
Okay.
and the youngest one would have been like 7.
Okay. So they have an idea what's going on then, for sure.
Yes, sir. Especially the oldest one. The
For sure.
youngest one was more or less just kind of trying to figure out what's happening, you know. But
Yeah.
the oldest one, you know, knew what was going on, and even still, once they came to live with me, um, the oldest one, you know, you have that point where the relationship had broken, and whatever lies were told by the enemy, they felt that daddy intentionally left them, you
Yeah.
know. So she was upset, and she let me know she was upset,
Yeah.
and she had even said that she hated me at one point, you know. And
At least she was
but
honest with her emotions instead of hiding them, though.
exactly, and I, you know, and they say that's healthier. And as men, we have a tendency to bottle it all up until we explode, you
Yeah.
know. So I had to learn that. Okay, now I'm a single dad, because I had planned on doing it my way. Okay, I'm gonna try to get a part-time job. I'm gonna save up some money so I can get an attorney, you know, and this and that. And it was always my work schedule would change, so I couldn't get a second job, you know. And so, but God worked it out. God worked it out. And so since that time, that would have been around 2005, 2006, somewhere in there. They've been with me ever since.
So, what was the conversation with your daughters making this transition? The reason why I'm asking is because
Yes,
I
sir.
mean are people that may watch this and want to
Yes, sir.
know how did you deal with this situation, being in such a challenging one?
I initially didn't handle it very well. Because it wasn't planned. It was just boom, here they are, you know. And I was still angry at my ex, you know. I was angry at the courts, you know, and so I had a lot of anger that I hadn't dealt with yet. So it was, okay, what am I supposed to do now? How am I supposed to handle this? I got to scramble to try to get an apartment that's big enough for us. You know, I didn't have the money to buy furniture that they needed, so I literally had a twin bed. I split it. One slept on the box spring, one slept on the mattress, you know, I just had to adapt, you know, and so it was hard. It was very hard, you know, and not having any support. So once I got out the military, fortunately, I was about to retire. I got out in 2006. I went back home, squeezed into my mom's apartment. You know, she wasn't really feeling it. I wasn't either. But I was like, look, I've got no place else to go, you know. So uh, squeezed into her apartment and then helped her move into a larger apartment to accommodate us, you know. And one of my brothers was already living there, so it was a tight squeeze, you know. But I knew that I had to keep pursuing something bigger, and I had to keep believing that God had something better, you know. And at some point, God did work it out. I ended up meeting my current wife, and we initially had a long distance relationship over the phone, and you know, just calling each other and email. And she eventually said, hey, we had gotten to a point where we were thinking about marriage, you know. And she said, well, if you want to marry me, you know, you need to make a trip down here. And I said, okay, well, I'm gotta work it out. I'm gonna come down to Texas, and which is where she was and where I am now. And we ended up initially meeting at a church revival type thing, church conference, and kind of just to see if we were going to take this to the next level. I was like, okay, if there's anything there, Lord, you know, let there be, you reveal it to us during this conference,
Make it
you
obvious.
know. And so we said, oh, right. And so we felt a connection. We said, okay, let's try to go to the next level and see what the Lord will do. So I went back to Colorado, and we started job searching, you know, from a distance, and God worked it out through a brother that was at the church conference. He told me about an organization that could help me put my resume together and distribute it, and told me about a job fair, you know, that was in Dallas. And I came down and got hired at a job. And next thing we started doing was looking for houses, and the Lord just boom, 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 started lining things up, you know. And I attribute that to be his favor, because now I was intentional about trying to live a godly life. I was intentional about having a godly wife to be the mother of my children. And so whatever wounds are there, that I knew that only God could help heal those, that I couldn't do it, you know, because I knew.
Why was that important for you to have a godly wife?
Well, because I had so many issues being married to an ungodly wife, you know, and just and learning the word, you know, being unequally yoked, you know, that things just don't work out when you're unequally yoked. God does that for a reason, you know, because you're not playing up from the same sheet of music, you know. She's got her goals, you got your goals. She might be worldly, you might be in the church, vice versa, and a house divided can't stand, the word tells us, you know. And sure enough, our house couldn't stand being that way. And yes, there's points where, you know, the spouse may repent and may come to Christ, but that just wasn't happening for us, you know. So the Lord blessed me with a godly wife, and we've now in our 12th year together, and she's been an awesome mother to our children. And what's amazing too is that God just led me to a woman who looks like she could be their mother. I mean, they look alike, you know. I mean, and who does that when you have blended families? You know, only God can do that. People think that they are her biological daughters, you know. And that's another testament to God.
What was the conversation from her to the kids? Like, you know, for them to have their mother, and then there'll be the separation, then they're living with you. Now there's a new woman coming into the picture. Like, what was that?
So what I did, while we were still in Colorado, and I was open with my daughters. I said, hey, there's this lady I'm interested in, and I didn't force my daughters, you know, because they had actually said, my oldest one, let me put it that way, my oldest daughter was like, Daddy, it's time, you need somebody. So, you know, that was God, you know. I was like, okay, you sure?
How old was she when she said that?
I want to say, and forgive me for my math, but I want to say she was maybe 14, 15, maybe.
Okay. And recognizing that you needed
somebody. Right. So, and obviously
I'll be interested in knowing
Well,
what.
I think too, she wanted a mother. She wanted a mother as well. And by this time, I was, active in church. I made sure that they were, when I went to church, they were going to church. I wasn't one of those fathers who sent the kids to church or had a friend take my kids to church. I was making sure we were in church. I didn't care if I was dog tired and there was church. When I got off work, we were going to church. There was even a point where I was involved in Hispanic ministry, and my kids, I would have them bring their coloring books and their Barbie dolls and sit in the back while I was playing drums for the Hispanic ministry, so, and then we would go home, but I wanted them to see the importance of submitting to God and being involved in church. And so that was a big help, I believe, to them seeing that, okay, Dad's not the same guy he used to be, and that it's time that he have somebody else. And they knew, that I wanted them to have a godly mother. And so I had introduced them to my current wife, Michelle. Basically, I had a birthday coming up. I was still in Colorado. Michelle was in Texas at the time. I said, hey, I got an idea. My birthday's coming up. I want to fly you up here. I'll get you a hotel, so we won't be doing anything crazy. And I'm gonna get two beds, and I want the girls to stay with you, so you have an opportunity to try to get to know one another and see if there's see how the girls react to you. And she agreed. So they spent the weekend together in the hotel. I stayed in my mom's apartment. I only went over there to bring them food and stuff. And we would just interact there at the hotel. I made sure that I was not intimate with her. We kept it pure, and undefiled before God. We no sex before marriage. And it was finally time for us to come together. And so I had basically, like I said, look for a job. I told my girls, I told my mom, I said, hey, I need you to watch my girls for me while I go down to Texas, try to find a job. And came down, God blessed me with a job. I came back. I said, okay, girls, Daddy's got to go get things set up. I got to go find us a place to live. And when I do, I'll come back and come get you. And so I did that. God blessed us with a home. I went back. I told my bosses, look, I need to go get my girls. And so God gave me favor with them. I went home, got my girls, stuffed as much as I could into my little SUV with them. I mean, literally, they were like packed in, all their things around them in the vehicle back seat.
Sound like y'all leveled up though, because it went from a Humpty to an SUV. So you were working on some. Did you hear me?
I'm sorry, it broke up.
Oh, I just said that.
It broke up.
Sounds like you leveled up because you went from a Hoopty to an SUV. So there was some productivity.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So what was when they were in the hotel, what was the conversations between her and them that made them be
that
like,
I don't know.
Like that?
I don't know. I to this day I don't know. I just know that I was putting them in God's hands, and I said, Lord, if it's for us to get married, then these girls will need to be able to get along with Michelle. And it turned out great. And when the visit was over, she went back to Texas, and I asked the girls, how did it go? What did they think of her, et cetera, et cetera? And they liked her. And my oldest one was okay with it. My youngest one, I think, was still a little oblivious, and kind of unsure, but she's not one to make waves anyway.
I got you, man. I really don't like that this goes out every now and then. It kind of breaks up the flow, of course, as you know, but that's okay. All right, we back at it. You there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So then, go ahead.
So they were fine with it, and so eventually, like I said, it was early 2008 that I attended the conference, and then the Lord blessed me with a job at the end of 2008, and I went back and got my daughters and brought them down to Texas, and God's been just doing some amazing things ever since. And then, but the funny thing about it is, you know how a woman carries a child in the womb for 9 months? Yeah. This new job had me traveling for 9 months away from home. Now, we had just bought a house, just gotten married, and boom, now I'm traveling. So it was like an incubation time, if you will, of them bonding, learning to bond with her, and getting to know them, getting to know each other. During 9 months, I would go out for a couple of weeks or whatever, and come home, and then go out, and we did that for 9 months.
Wow.
And God was just building that bond between the mother and the children. And even to the point where I was a little bit envious and jealous when I would come home, It was like they'd be like, "Okay, Daddy, bye." They give me a hug and run to her, So
Wow.
it was all God. It was all God, And
So
I'm just so grateful.
kind of talk to me about how you were parenting when you were in the house. Like, what are like since I don't know about this time. She's 14, so she's probably the oldest is 14. The youngest is somewhere around 11 or so, or something like
Right.
that. So, what are the conversations with the girls? Had your son been born by this time?
No, sir. No, sir. He's only 2.5 years old right now.
Oh, that's
So
right.
God,
That's right.
right.
Okay.
So
Okay.
basically, well, one of the first things that I told them even before I went on my first trip away from them was, okay, we're getting married, and I'm laying down the ground rules now. When Daddy's not here, she's in charge, and do not disrespect her, or you will deal with me. And what she says goes. I trust her. I trust that she'll use godly wisdom and take care of you all, and I trust you all with her. I trust her with you all, and so I said that right away. And so if I had any issues at all, if Michelle told me, look, you need to talk to them about this or that, I talked to them about it. It's like, look, you know the deal. You're supposed to.
All right. Yeah, be right back. Oh, this is good. I enjoy hearing the perspective of a girl dad, because I have two myself. One of them is 3, and one of them is about to be 12. So yeah. So as you're talking to them and saying that you're leaving, and you're giving them the direction. So then that time comes. You come back into the house where you're there for a longer period of time now. And so they're probably 15 and 12. And so she's becoming a young lady. Well, they both are becoming young ladies, but now 15 is totally different than 14 and 13. So like kind of help us give us some pointers of how what's a good way to parent a 15 and 12-year-old girls.
So I'm not sure if I heard the question right. It was breaking up on my end again, but
You know where
basically, we had growing pains like most families do with teenagers, uh, and they have those rebellious streaks, and but my wife and I would just continue to pray for them. We continued to discipline them. We didn't. There was no hands off. No, okay, I can't handle this. Oh, timeout. No, we still let them know, look, this is what it is. This is what the word says. And some would say I was too preachy, but in my opinion, it's like, look, I know what the word of God can do because he worked on me, and it won't be said that they didn't know. When I go before God, my hands will be clean. Look, I may have given them the word harshly and they didn't receive it, but they still got the word, and they can't say they didn't know. So though that foundation was hard to build, it was still being built. There was no passivity. I wasn't going to shy away from still being the dad and the head of the household. The king, and my wife being the queen. So it's like, okay, God's our head, and the family is dependent on me to uphold his standard and teach them. The word tells us, and you're going out and you're coming in, you still teach. When you're sitting down, when you're laying down, you still teach. Good times and bad, you still teach, because we need God in all situations. So it also helped me by giving them the word. It helped keep me in check, because my flesh will want to, oh no, you didn't, and let me get that belt, because that's how I was raised, But the Lord had to work on me to remind me that I'm not my dad. You're not him. I'm training you to be different. I'm training you to be a godly father, a godly man, a godly husband. So I had to learn to submit myself to the word so I could teach them. And the other thing was too, I wasn't going to teach them something I wasn't willing to hold myself accountable to, you know?
Yes.
So, so they got the word, you know, and that foundation was laid. Now what they do with it, that's on them, you know? Um, but that's true for any of us, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, Christ died for the whole world, but yet we still have a hell because not everybody's going to accept him, you know?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but now, you know, I mean, years went by, they started smoothing things out. And unfortunately, the oldest one, by the time she was 21, you know, or 20, had gotten out of control, you know. So we were like, okay, you're grown now, you're an adult. You think you can do it your way, do it your way, you know. So we had to put her out the house because she was becoming a bad influence on her younger sibling,
Mm.
you know, on her sister. And so
Was that a
that's just
conversation
what
that
popped up.
y'all had together, or was that an ended
Yes,
like?
yes, yes.
So y'all had
No,
just
that
sat.
we had a family decision. We had, you know, we gave her several opportunities to straighten up. We explained to her why we were doing it, what was going to happen if she didn't straighten up, and she didn't care. She was like, whatever, you know, type attitude. You know how teenagers do, you
Yeah.
know. And but by this time she was 20 years old, so she had plenty of opportunities to repent. She had plenty of opportunities to submit to the Lord's authority, not ours, the Lord's authority. So because the word says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, you know, that it may be well with you, that you may live long upon the land, you know. So that's a decision that she has to live with, you know. But the funny thing about it is the younger sister was upset with her, like, why couldn't you just obey the rules? Why couldn't you just obey the rules of the house? Why couldn't you just do what mom and dad said, you know? So so now that she's grown, if you will, she's now 28, you know, and the youngest is or 29. She's now 29, and relationship has been up and down, up and down. You know, she's had her own relationship issues, you know, that she's dealing with, but she still knows the godly standard. You know, she still knows. So
So how do you?
anytime.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I apologize. I
No, go
thought
ahead.
you
Go
were.
ahead.
I was just
No,
going to
I was just gonna say. Go ahead. Go ahead.
ask. No, you go. Okay. My bad. Okay, so that's what I wanted to know. Like, how is it being a dad of adult women, especially in this day and time, in relation to having to date, in relation to having a career? Like, how do you counsel them? How do you talk to them? How are you dad to them at this stage?
At this age, all you can do is make suggestions because
Okay.
they're grown adults, you know, and they've reached that age of accountability, you know, before God. So all we can do is continue to live the example before them, not just speak it. You know, it's show and tell. It's like, I'm gonna show you how to do it before I tell you how to do it. You
That's
know,
good.
and then lead by example. I mean, even perfect example. We wanted them to go back to school, you know, and work on a degree just to better themselves, so they could potentially get better paying jobs, you know, and they didn't want to do it. So, but God had told my wife and I to go back to school, you know, so we went back to school. We both got our degrees. I just recently completed my master's degree. My wife completed her master's before I did. And so now our kids see that if we could do it in our 40s and 50s, they can do it in their 20s, you know. And because once again, we didn't want to just tell them to do it without us doing it as well, you know,
Yeah.
leading by example, because people will read you like a book, and they, you know, they can learn from a distance. You know,
Yeah.
I don't have to say a word. I'll let my actions speak for me, you
Yeah.
know. So that's where we are now. So whenever they'll call us when they need advice about this matter or that matter. And it's just like, okay, this is what I would do, or this is what the word says, how we should handle this situation. And we pray that you make the right decision, but we're not going to force you to do anything.
That's what's up. So how is it having a 2-year-old?
So we like to say God's got jokes. So the Lord
Well,
had
I mean,
actually
y'all were kind of
prophesied to my wife.
y'all were actually a part of it, though. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, yes, sir. So the Lord had actually given my wife prophetic words even before we were together,
Okay.
from several different people on several different occasions, saying that she was going to have 2 boys. And she was like, "How is that going to happen? I'm not with anybody," And so we got married, and it. She was pursuing bodybuilding and things like that, so she was not trying to get pregnant,
Mm, mm,
And uh, so for several years, we weren't trying. We weren't trying to get her pregnant, And then finally, I was like, Lord, people keep telling her, but I haven't heard it, But I'm believing her because
mm.
I know she hears from you. And then finally, we were attending a house fellowship prayer night, and they had a guest prophet, if you will. And at the end, we went to go shake his hand and say, "Hey, it was great meeting you, and God bless you." We were about to leave, and he was like, "Hold up, do you have 2 kids?" And I was about to tell him, "Yeah, we got 2 daughters." And my wife was like, "Hold up, hold up. What do you see?" Because wives are more spiritually intuitive, right? So she was like, "What do you see?" And he said, "I see 2 boys with hair like you, Victor." And I was like, okay, all right, Lord, you gave me the word, And then it was just a matter of waiting on God for the right time, and physically, spiritually, emotionally. And then the Lord gave us the okay to try, and 2.5 years later.
Oh, wow. Wow. 2.5 years later, he has a son. That's pretty cool. We currently have a 3-year-old who is is rambunctious. Yeah, that's what's up. Yeah, we currently have a 3-year-old, so uh,
All right, all
I
right.
know where you at. We have four and they're all under 12. So we are
Wow, wow.
yeah. So that's where we at. So now, so what is the parenting like for you for a 2-year-old? What are we learning here? No. Better question. No. Wait, I got a better question. What has God taught you about having a 2-year-old son?
Well, first of all, it was a test of obedience to a prophetic word, that it was stretching us, because I had never um, done anything like this, And I was like, well, Lord, okay, this is a leap of faith. I don't know how you're gonna provide for us.
Mm.
With a little, it's been a while. It's been a minute since I've changed diapers, you know, and
Mm.
but we were just obedient, and God gave us the grace. I was grateful that God didn't wait till I was 90, like He did with Abraham,
Okay.
you know. So I said,
Okay.
okay, Lord, at least I'm not 90 years old, so
Yeah.
I've got a little more energy. So that's the biggest thing, is asking for the grace of God, His grace. I've learned that His grace truly is sufficient in those times when you don't want to get up, you don't want to tend to Him,
Mm.
and Lord, He needs me. And so what I'm still learning, is how forgiving, children are.
Yeah.
When we mess up, or we got the bad attitude, we're tired because we worked all night and got to get up in the morning, and how forgiving, and how much they want, he wants me to spend time with him. And
Yeah.
at one point I felt the Lord say, "That's how I want you to be with me." And that's the hardest part right there, because I didn't have that with my dad,
Yeah.
and so I'm still learning how to be intimate with my Heavenly Father. And
Yeah.
for my son, for that life lesson to come through a little 2-year-old, it's
Mhm.
like, wow, God, wow, you want me to come to you the way he comes to me, you
That's
know?
what's up. Yeah.
And yes, sir. So I'm learning that. I'm learning he just wants to have fun and play, and it's like the Lord says, I want you to do that too. You don't have to be Mr. Serious all the time. I want you to enjoy being in my presence. I want you to enjoy spending time with me. I want to be involved in every aspect of your life. He's our little boy. He is like, "What you doing? What is that?" and can I have some of that? And he doesn't have full words yet, so it's like, he's pointing at this and pointing
Right.
at that,
Yeah. Yeah.
but he wants to be involved, and I believe that that's God. God is like that with us. He wants us to involve him in everything because he made us,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and so he wants to be our good and our bad, and there's times that he has to spiritually spank my behind,
Yeah.
and just like I have to get on my son occasionally, so uh, so learning how to discipline him differently than I did from my girls, the lessons learned from that, um, using more godly wisdom early,
Yeah.
because the advantage that I have now is that uh, we're a threefold cord, my wife and I,
Right.
with the Lord in the middle, and so he's getting a godly, um,
Upbringing.
a stronger foundation, godly foundation than my daughters had.
Yeah.
There was no house divided. The house is not divided now like it was with them.
Yeah.
So there's no confusion. The enemy can't bring confusion in. I mean, this little boy he's he senses spirits. He even tries to pray for people. If we're getting ready to pray, he reminds me that we need to pray before we eat.
That's
And
good.
he's like, pray, and
Yeah. That's good.
and God's hand is on him, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful to see how he is so sensitive to the spirit of God.
That's what's up. So we have come to the point of our question, our three questions. All right, I wanted you to continue the story, right? So I didn't want to cut you off. So that was good. So I need you to give me a number between 1 and 45.
7.
Okay. Everybody always picks 7, which is the very best they do. Which is the very best Christmas present you have ever received or given to someone else?
Hmm, that's a good one. I would say it's different in my mind than the recipient.
Okay.
um, at
Is
one
your
point, our
question?
oldest, well, I thought it was a good gift, and the reaction appeared to be a good gift. But there was one point when our oldest daughter was playing violin, and she had asked for an electric violin, and so we surprised her with that, and she seemed to love it, and she played it. She even started playing it in church, and she hasn't played it since. Our lives have gone different directions, but um, that was a joy for me because I got to see her using a gift that God put in her. So anytime that I can give a gift that is not just something they like, and I won't even say bling because that's not a good word, but something that they appreciate and something that they're gonna actually use, you know, that's when it hits it for me, especially like I said with the violin, seeing my daughter play that.
Yes,
That just blessed me to see her because we wanted her to serve the Lord, to see her doing that. Uh, that was a treasure. And then for
that's what's up.
myself, I would say the first Christmas with my new wife in our new home. Um, that was the best Christmas.
That's what's up.
It was kind of awkward, but the fact that I had a godly wife now, and God had blessed us with our own home. I wasn't living in sharing an apartment with my mom, you know,
Mhm.
um, and God was just doing some great and mighty things, So that first Christmas with my new wife was my best present.
That's what's up. Jordy, mommy's not in here, baby. That's my 3-year-old.
uh,
Give me all right. Next number.
I'll go with 33.
33. What is your favorite thing about your mother?
She was a godly example for me. When I had joined the military, gone off to the military, and got in with the wrong crowd, and um, stopped living for the Lord, because I accepted Christ when I was 12, but with the divorce and other things, I strayed away from God. Getting into the military, getting with the wrong crowd, I gone even further. away from God and gotten into sin and all that. And when it was time for me to repent, I remember being mad at the world for whatever reason, mad at Uncle Sam for whatever reason. And I was working out in my dorm room, hard martial arts workout. And I looked in the mirror and I didn't like what I saw. I was like, wow, God, what have I become? My mom would be ashamed of me. And if my mom's ashamed of me, you're probably ashamed of me. And if you're real, you were real to my mom, be real to me, prove it. Prove to me that you're real. Because I don't want to live like this anymore. And it was like the Lord lifted this invisible, heavy backpack off of me and wrapped his warm, loving arms around me, and it broke me. And I started to live with him. That was December 31st, 1989.
Wow.
Building 145, room 117, Okinawa, Japan. And it was New Year's Eve, and I rededicated my life to Christ. But it was my mom's example. She's always praying. She's always reading her Bible. If you're real to her, be real to me.
That's what's
that was my fondest memory of my mom. Yes, sir.
What's up? Last number.
Let's go with 24.
What is your favorite food?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
What is your favorite food?
Favorite food? Oh, that's easy. Chicken. Any version of chicken. I love me some chicken. I'm a chicken hawk.
Okay. When's the last time you had it?
Yesterday, and I'm about to go buy some more.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you for answering those questions. We got two more questions. We got two more questions.
Yes.
Which TV dad would you say you share the same characteristics with?
Wow.
It could be now, or it could be present, or it could be past.
Wow. I would say the closest, because sadly, and I don't watch a whole lot of TV because there's so much, for lack of a better term, junk on TV. So I haven't really seen any TV dads that are where I'm at in my life. You know, a lot of them are just straight up, for lack of a better term, knuckleheads, you know, and the wife is running things, or the kids are disrespectful toward them, you know, and so I don't like what I see with a lot of the TV dads. The closest one would have been Dr. Huxtable, you know, and only because of what he represented, not the real man, but the actor, that role, because he was educated. He was an educated black man. He was taking care of his family well. You know, his wife was educated, and they love music. I love music. So I would say that character, Dr. Huxtable, was someone I wanted to emulate. I wanted to become.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And the last question is, how would you like for your kids to remember you? What would you want them to say about you?
That I love God, I serve God, and I was not a hypocrite before them with my walk with God.
Hey, enough said. Well, I want to say, to those that are watching, thank you for tuning in. Like, share, comment, subscribe to the channel. And you have the last words, Mr. Victor. What would you like to say to the people?
Just want to say thank you for this opportunity to you, Mr. Elijah. Just an opportunity to just share what God's done in my life a little bit. And God bless you all. Love Jesus, serve Jesus, and trust the Holy Spirit to guide and order your steps.
That's what's up. Well, thank you for your time. And we are out of here. It's been dope.
Thank you.